Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast. This is the podcast where 4 psychotherapists, 3 of us Canadian, 1 of us Americans serve you cutting-edge mental health knowledge. I'm Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from the greater Vancouver area.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, also a registered clinical counselor from Port Moody.
I'm Chris Boyd, a psychotherapist from Coquitlam.
Okay. I don't think we've heard Port Moody.
No, really switched it up.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of choices, I guess.
We do.
Just say Vancouver area. Coquitlam. Port Moody. Well, guys, it's been a couple of weeks. How's everyone doing? Everyone winding down their summer?
Yeah. Our little, am I back?
Yeah, you're here.
Yep. You never went
Oh,
anywhere.
it froze somewhere. Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah, no, we had a crazy hot summer as we had been talking about, but that seems to be over now. So now we have normal temperatures and things seem a little bit cooler. Some of the leaves are starting to change already, actually. Everyone's, we're starting to feel fall-esque.
Fall-esque, yes. Yeah, well, it's probably nice. We're in Southern California, still experiencing a heat wave, and we haven't really begun our fire season yet, so we'll see how things go.
Yes, and your students are back in school. Ours don't go back
Yes.
until September 7th.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, we've had students in school for a couple of weeks now. Pretty wild. Yes. So I guess with summer winding down, the changing of the seasons, do you guys actually, do your leaves change colors up there?
Oh, they sure do.
Do they?
Yep.
What
I think
time?
we're all-
What time does that, what time of year does that happen?
I'm gonna say October. So around Canadian Thanksgiving is pretty peak for where we are. So Whistler, which many listeners have probably heard of Whistler, BC, great tourist destination for skiing and snowboarding and that sort of thing. Their peak is typically early October, and then our peak is maybe a week or 2 after that.
Okay.
So
But it
September
starts
September
now.
start. Yeah. Or you've been, pretty quick.
Yeah, builds pretty good through September. Yeah.
Wow.
Seems some vibrant trees out there right now.
That's awesome. It'd be
And
beautiful.
I know you miss the foliage, Ryan, being an Oregon
Yeah.
guy living down in Los Angeles.
Yep. I lived a lot of places where it was in Portland. It was definitely the trees would turn. That was lovely. And I moved to Bend and lived there for a lot of my life. And it was mostly evergreens. So it was just green turning to green.
Mm.
And now I'm in Southern California where it's usually green and like the hills are nice and green in the spring. And then it just turns brown because things just kind of dry up and die. And that's about it.
Breathtaking.
It's
Little different.
stunning. Yes, it is. Beautiful stuff out there. Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead and dive into our topic, shall we?
Oh, I think so.
Because we get to talk about a book tonight. And it's the moment we've all been waiting for, the book club, right?
Book club.
Do we have a jingle for this?
Let's listen to the jingle. Oh, that was amazing. Wow.
Such a good jingle, Joe.
Well
Jingle
done.
club.
I never get over Joe's lyrics for that. It's breathtaking.
I just love the
Yeah.
intonation, like
It's really
book
good.
club.
Yeah.
Club.
You're welcome.
Oh, perfect.
It's
So before we jump into book club, I'm just curious, how many people read the book versus listened?
listener right here.
Listener over here.
I'm a listener too.
Oh, we all
So we
listened.
all listened. but I've decided to use this book for a presentation for our group. So the private practice that Joanna and Chris and I work at, we do every year in October, we do a case or a group meeting and we all present to each other. So I'm going to do a presentation on this. So I actually bought the book as well. So I have a hard copy. So I'm very curious to see the handouts that they refer to, the PDFs like in my hand and be able to flip through and stuff. But yeah, we all listened.
It's interesting. I'd be curious actually to take a look at the book sometime, because the audiobook, it was actually pretty nice because it was kind of conversational. I know it was scripted, but it was sort of set up to be kind of conversational between Oprah and Dr.
Bruce Perry.
Dr. Bruce Perry. And so there was kind of this little back and forth. And also there would be these snippets of Oprah, like interviewing someone on her show.
Yeah.
And it was actual clips from the show. So that was nice little audio clips there that kind of spiced it up. So I'm curious how that works on print form, you know?
I wonder if this book was actually written to be an audiobook and then adapted for type.
Maybe.
Just how it played out.
Yeah, well, guys, let's dive into this book, shall we?
Yeah. So for listeners who don't know, we read What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. That is the book we will be discussing. Go.
And it just came out like within the last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, came out within the last year. In fact, they were talking about the pandemic and lockdown a bit in the book. So it's something that's fresh.
Absolutely. So Joanna and I seem to work a decent amount with trauma. And Chris, I think you've read Dr. Perry's other book. I know I have. I'm pretty sure Joanna, have you? The Boy Who Was Raised by Dogs.
Yeah, such a good book. Yeah.
Very good book. So Ryan, I'm just curious, on your thoughts on this, because you always refer to us as the trauma people. And this was definitely a trauma book.
It was a trauma book. What I also appreciated about it, though, was that it was also kind of a depth book. Like, you know, I kind of have the psychodynamic roots, which means that I like to look at kind of what are the origins of people's issues. You know, why does someone feel the way they do, and why do they do the things they do? And that's definitely in line with everything that they were talking about here. So they're talking. So the whole point that they just drive home, and boy, I've got a couple things to say about that, but they really drive home the point of like, they really want to have people start asking the question, what happened to you? Not what's wrong with you, or what what are you doing? What are you doing wrong? But it's what happened to you as a starting point for people to start looking at, how did these behaviors and these feelings and these issues develop, and that will help inform us as we're treating people going forward. So I felt like it fit very nicely with my kind of framework in any case, instead of just saying, okay, here's the behavior. This, like, a more cognitive behavioral approach would be, here's what the behavior is, how do we change it? And you don't really pay much attention to why it's happening or where it came from. That doesn't really matter so much in CBT worlds. It's more of just, okay, let's just change the behavior, change the thoughts. And this says, no, we really need to pay attention to where it came from and why. So I like that.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Yes. Yes.
Joanna or Chris, do you have any initial thoughts?
I kind of smiled about the key point they kind of sent home there, Ryan, when you said it, because they probably mention it like 352 times in, like, as they're going of it's not this or that, it is what happened to you. And it's just I think even throughout every chapter they say it multiple times, so they definitely make sure that's it's a very important point, and they definitely mention it many times. But I really
I joke about it because that got a little old for me. It's like, okay, Oprah, like 100%. Oprah's really, she wants to make sure this is her
It
her
got old
legacy.
for me too.
Like, okay, I get it. Yes, what happened to you?
Yes.
But she
Yeah.
even makes a point of saying that, like, that's, and I didn't really realize this with a lot of Oprah's work. I never really watched the show, but it's like, that's really been a big focus in a lot of her, when her show was on, was like really looking at people's lives, looking at how trauma affected them. Sorry to butt in, Joe.
No. Yeah, I didn't really know. I thought it was interesting. I didn't really know about their relationship. When I saw Oprah was kind of on this book, authoring it, I was like, oh, I wonder what her deal is. And I don't know a lot about Oprah, and I didn't really know that their relationship goes back many decades. And I think that was pretty cool. I think they've obviously done a lot of really good work together in the trauma field, and for her own background and all the work she's done. I like that. I like that kind of introduction to it. And listening to the book as well. I like the conversational style. I like to think of them sitting there together, although they're probably not, and just kind of chatting and kind of going through their own histories and their own experiences. I like the mix of like case studies through Bruce Perry's work, which is great. I also liked Oprah kind of, bringing up different interviews she did, and also her own stuff there. So it was a easy listen, I felt. So initial thoughts were it was an easy listen, and that's all I'll share for now. So,
Yeah, I agree. It flowed really well compared to our previous book, The Black Swan, which was a bit of a heavy read. I agree with you, Joanna. I don't really know a lot about Oprah, to be honest. I never really considered myself to be a fan of hers or a follower of hers, but what a pioneer when it comes to mental health and, touching on, exploring these topics for a really long time, for decades, right? And with the influence she gained based on her popularity, and to actually get some of these people together and in the trauma field and try to make sense of it and try to make that relatable to people, it's kind of neat, because sometimes there's a divide where you have people doing some great work out there, but it's a little too complicated. It's a lot of jargon. It's tough to get that message to people in a way that they can understand it and comprehend it. So I kind of like the synergy the two of them had. So yeah, really first impression is that it flowed really nicely. I enjoyed listening to it. Bruce Perry, what an all-star. My goodness, we'll get into the details of it, but the way he was able to conceptualize these ideas with such confidence and ease was impressive to me. Yeah, Brooke, what do you think?
I would echo what you guys have said. I too, not a big follower of Oprah, didn't know too much. Familiar with the fact that she interviews people and typically on difficult topics, but didn't really know too much about her own background, or how she was quite the pioneer in bringing up difficult topics right from the outset, right? When things were still newer, not talked about, which is pretty cool to see. And the experience of listening to the book, I thought was really pleasant. I thought Bruce Perry's tone was like a therapeutic healing tone throughout the book. His pitch and his cadence and his space, just his delivery of his message was great, which made it really digestible. I liked the back and forth. I thought there was a lot of information in there, and I appreciated Oprah swinging in to kind of do the summary or the paraphrasing, just to really try and hit home some of the points. So yeah, I'm on board with you guys. Overall, I like the book. I wouldn't be doing a presentation on it if I had it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there.
For sure. Yeah, her jumping in there and saying, hey, what do you mean by this term? Or what do you mean, like, how is this different from that?
Right.
Was a really nice touch.
What you're saying is, or let me see if I have this right.
Yeah.
And kind of wrapping it up a little bit for the listener, I think is a really positive piece. Is I've actually already referred this book to a few clients. Like, it was that fast for me.
Wow.
But the heads up that I gave them was that it could come across as a bit jargony. I thought the information that was provided was really good. It was thorough. I thought it was digestible, but we are familiar with this language. We're familiar with trauma. We're familiar with neuroscience. And so for a novel reader or someone that's just getting into trauma work, I do think that this would be a harder read potentially for them. I think it's a worthy read, but it might be a bit challenging for them.
Bruce has his model, which is his model of the upside down triangle, of how trauma occurs and what that does to the brain and to the body. And I had to listen to it twice, actually. I didn't really get it first, and I've been doing this work for a long time. So I agree with you. I'm just piggybacking on what you're saying there, Brooke, that like, yes, I think it's good material, but it's not everything is served up in the most user-friendly way, right? You might have to
But
sit
to
with
make,
it
yeah.
a couple times.
But to make note, if you get the audio book, there is a PDF that accompanies that. So you have like 20 pages of all the diagrams and different things they talked about. So that's kind of a perk of, I don't know if any of that's available. Actually, in the book, they'd have all the diagrams too, wouldn't they? There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they do it's really a deep dissection of how trauma affects people, how it affects the body, how it affects your impulses and your kind of automatic responses, and really goes deep into the kind of the pairing of things. Like if you basically, if you're bit by a dog, then the next time you see a dog, you're going to have a response, and a response that, or have something that's reminds you of that experience. Your body's going to react in the same physical way, and that's kind of a natural protective system that we have. And fortunately, they do talk a bit about the fact that that's something that we can work on, and we don't have to have that same trauma response every time we the fight, flight, freeze sort of response that we might have.
Yeah. So you mentioned getting bit by a dog. A lot of the examples they use, like Bruce Perry, he's a hot shot in the trauma field. Like if there's a major crisis, he's often called up to deal with it. A lot of the cases that he discussed were pretty extreme.
Yeah.
My goodness.
The Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas, right? We talked about the trauma experienced by the kids who saw this horrific thing take place in the mid-90s. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he will just bring up a case like, oh, well, for this little girl who was forced to shoot her parents before fleeing to America. And this is his world that he works in, these very extreme cases. Then of course, Oprah, she has the ability to bring a lot of these stories to light too, but also often on the extreme end of things too, right? Because she has a TV show, she wants to attract viewership. So I think that was one thing I would have liked to was maybe a bit more examples of trauma that that aren't so extreme, a little more relatable to maybe the general population, perhaps.
Yeah, I think when they talked about children and stressful, I think they did relate a little bit that it doesn't need to, I don't know, they talked about a lot of like just chaos in the home and things like that. It wasn't necessarily like, or just forms of kind of neglect, or even if a parent's on their devices all the time and aren't responsive. Like I think they're trying to tailor it a little bit to what the general population might deal with. But I do agree, they had some pretty heavy hitting examples there of neglect and abuse and things like that. But find it all fascinating though. I think it's super interesting how he's able to work with those people, and even Oprah interviewing the people she did. I think it's very interesting.
Sure. Yeah, it's just so coherent and cohesive, the message, which you don't often find in the field of psychology at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But some interesting little tidbits information. Like I've never heard of, they talk about fight, flight, freeze. He added flock to that.
Yeah.
Which I've never heard that before. I thought it was really interesting, but really resonated with me, because that's often people's initial reaction is to flock, meaning to assess other people's reactions to that situation, right? So I thought it was intriguing. I don't know if you guys picked up on other little tidbits that you didn't know prior to reading it?
Man. A lot of it was just a really nice kind of review, but I liked when he talked about how I don't know, if you're listening, if someone is really dysregulated, this is when it talked about like the relationships like between people. A relationship is a superhighway to the cortex, he said. I really liked like if someone is dysregulated, whether a child, they gave the example, the regulation is key for the safe connection is needed. And so helping someone to co-regulate is really important, but whether reflective listening, and he talks about how we can be sponges for other people's emotional intensities. So they can catch our calm. I liked that. People can catch your calm. So if someone's having a tough time, just reflect. You can kind of be a sponge for some of the stuff they're kind of really getting out there intensely. And yeah, I thought that was good. I like the catch the calm kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're right though. The importance of relationships and connection was a huge part of this book, right? I guess we know that as well before reading this book. Is such a big part of the healing process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated little snippets throughout. There's tons, but I think I appreciated him stating that trauma processing happens in moments. It doesn't have to happen like intense conversation over the course of hours. That in itself can actually be re-traumatizing for people. And just reaffirming that and being aware of that, because I think that's a misconception that so many people have, that like we have to talk about this and talk about it at length and whatnot. But if somebody needs to drop in, share a sentence or a moment, and then distract or lift out, that's okay and that's healthy, and we can give them space to do that. And that's probably actually going to be healthier, because I think that's a big kind of pitfall that people fall into when they start working with trauma, or if they don't realize that that's what they're dealing with, that there is a trauma background, and they move too fast, and which is actually more harmful.
Totally.
So just giving the space. I also really appreciated he mentioned it would take on average, I think he said 6 to 12 times of a positive connection to really build a relationship that somebody would consider safe or potentially safe, and how those moments don't necessarily have to be 12 therapy sessions if you're a therapist, but they could be brief moments. So if you're somebody in a school and there's a new student that comes, you want to make sure you're connecting with that student in a positive, healthy manner 12 different times, intentionally connecting.
Like
and
5-minute little snippets, even
5-minute little snippets, and then you will slowly become a healthier, safe person, where they're then able to connect with you better, right? So I thought that was really great and tangible, and kind of takes the pressure off as well, right?
I love that as well. That was a big takeaway for me. And he used the story of a 3-year-old boy who saw his sister like kidnapped, I believe. And how they needed to interview this boy so that they could get a testimony to use in court, something like that. And so he knew that there would have to be these dozen different interactions, but he was like, we can't do just 12 therapy sessions. That takes too long. We need something sooner than that. So we had 12 interactions in a day, but they were just these small little interactions. And I just thought that was great. The building of trust is not just about the verbal interaction between him as the doctor and the little boy, but like the mom saying, oh, this is my friend Dr. Perry, and can I get you a cup of coffee? Like just showing a friendly connection relationship there helps the person feel at ease, and then the boy felt a little more comfortable opening up. But I take that into account regarding therapy, and how clients oftentimes coming in, they might not know who we are, they might not know how therapy works. Of course they're going to be anxious and scared, and very doubtful they're going to dive into their deepest, darkest pain in the very first session. It takes a while, and it takes kind of consistency and being able to trust the relationship can handle it.
Not just the relationship, but as you speak, Ryan, of like the boy witnessing the relationship between the mom and Dr. Perry.
Mhm.
Also for us therapists, what it is, the experience of coming to the session. So your office itself, the
Mhm.
people, if you have a receptionist, the interactions with the receptionist, the
Mm.
lighting or other people in the room or the music or whatever in the waiting room, or how they witness communication between colleagues as they pass by in the hallway or whatever that might be. So those, to deem the place itself as a safe place.
Mhm.
And there was one client of mine years ago, I forget who it was or under what context, but she had mentioned to me one of the things that made her the most comfortable or knew that she could open up to me is because I always asked if she wanted a cup of tea. And I would get her the cup of, I would make the tea for her and bring it into the room.
Mm.
And for her, that was this monumental, like that symbolized that I was caring and compassionate and thinking of her, and I was there for her.
Huh.
And yeah,
Great.
so that kind of stood out to me throughout that part of it.
Yeah, it's the whole package, right?
The whole package.
The whole
And
thing.
then evaluating my own relationships with colleagues or friends or whatnot, because sometimes I get on business mind, and so the interactions are more blunt or abrupt or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I probably didn't intentionally connect well with that person today. I should probably do that.
Yeah. Bruce Perry, in his recent or the prior book, The Boy Who Was Raised a Dog, it was kind of neat how he gets on the same level as kids, right? He gets on
Physically.
meets them eye to eye. Like he's 6'3", he's a big guy, but he will get on his knees or get on his hands and knees and kind of meet them eye to eye, but play with them, engage with them, right? And so it's not about just sitting there in a traditional therapeutic setting and having a conversation. It's he engages in a very non-threatening, playful way. I think he comes across as a very genuine, authentic person. So I think he's just being himself, which definitely helps. But it disarms the kids a bit. Their level of comfort definitely increases, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
I thought it was interesting closer to the end of the book. So throughout the book, we're talking more about like individual trauma. And near the end there, it turned into a bigger cultural discussion. So whether that is talking about loneliness is really popping up in a lot of our books here.
Mhm.
And the disconnection that we have, but also racism was discussed a little, and biases and internal biases, and looking at that and what that means, epigenetics. I thought that part of the book was really interesting. I was like, I'm glad that they're taking that and trying to tie these pieces together as best that they can, given the time that they have. I enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I agree. No, for sure. It was nice tie-in, because it helps people understand that there's a generational aspect to this, right? Previous traumas can impact our well-being, our level of reactivity now. But
Right.
also, we've talked in this podcast about how familiarity often leads to a sense of safety and security. So being patient with the process as well, and supporting someone, even if it's if they're leaving a very difficult situation, it's not, there's still parts of that they're drawn to because of that familiarity.
I also liked how I don't know, when something to kind of help oneself, it's or just talks about rhythmic, patterned rhythmic movements. And so, there's an example of like, if you're walking with someone who's really upset, or you're, to walk or to shoot hoops, and kind of doing something like that rhythmically is actually a way to kind of keep oneself regulated, to help oneself get regulated. So I thought that was a good little reminder of the importance of, movements like that. So dancing, walking, shooting basketball hoops, playing the drums.
Music, yeah.
Music, yeah.
Color as well. They reference color, or knitting and crocheting, and and then you start thinking about all these clients that we're trying to get them to sit still, when really maybe we should be moving a little bit more and giving them permission to do that.
Yeah.
I often have fidget toys or different things in the office for clients to do if they need it, but through COVID, you couldn't really do that.
No.
No touchies.
But massage is another one for some people, not for everyone, but another kind of just repetitive movement. So I think, a little how to kind of help oneself. And we talk about nature all the time, but walking in nature and just the natural sensory kind of things that nature provides is just also helpful. So just a
You
little.
even alluded to the fact that like evolutionarily almost, or at least in our ancient historical predecessors, people in early tribal cultures, the coming together after a battle or something like that and beating on a drum and dancing was like probably something they used to help regulate emotions. Which I think is, you must have dug that, Chris. Come on, evolutionary psychology guy.
I think
So
we
did you
addressed
get
that a
there?
couple weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah,
In
maybe
our
so.
Evolutionary podcast. I think song and
Yes.
dance came up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he just said the importance of physical therapy, and also, so if you are attending therapy, to also do the things outside of therapy, like the walking, maybe go see a massage therapist if that works for you, or to get in some movement, because that could be really helpful to you. And he also just toted how so much of the healing happens outside the therapy office, and just the importance of what you're doing on your own time, and those activities are equally as important, if not probably more important. Yes, Ryan.
I have a bone to pick.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
I have one bone to pick with this book, and it was a brief little, just a second that happened in this book. But boy, it really got my goat. You ready for it?
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to talk about it. Yes, and then I need to like beat a drum or something to help regulate. So at one point, Dr. Perry's talking about what happens in therapy, and Oprah says, "Oh, well, I've never been to therapy, but
Yeah.
I talk with my friend Gail about all these things." Da, 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 da. And immediately what came to my mind was, why did you say that, Oprah?
Yeah.
Why? What is important about saying that? Now, it doesn't matter if she has been or hasn't been. She's one of the biggest mental health advocates in history. There's no doubt about that. Why do you have to say you've never gone to therapy? For one thing, why not go to therapy, Oprah? You have more money than God. You can go to therapy for a few sessions and say that you've been to therapy. Why not go to therapy, for one thing? And number two, if you haven't been, why talk about it? Because what does that do but say to some people, oh, I don't need therapy. I just need my friends. Also, if we want to have a whole podcast on how therapy is different than friendship, we can talk about that too, because there are a lot of different factors there. I'm not at all belittling friendship or trying to make any commentary on Oprah's friendship with Gail, but they're very different entities, and they serve different purposes. And there are ways that therapy and friendship cross paths, and ways that they're very, very different, and that friends can't do the same things that therapists do, and therapists can't do the same thing friends do. So anyway, I was just stuck with like, why did you say that, Oprah?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
If
That was a bit like
if Oprah said, look, everyone, I've gone to therapy, I think it's great, immediately 1 million people would try therapy out, right? I think, because that's the kind of pull she has down here. If she says, I've never gone to therapy, I don't want to go to therapy, or I'll never go to therapy, then 1 million people would stop going to therapy. Just why even go there?
Yeah. No, I
That's a
did
good point.
notice that
No.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit of a jaw drop moment, I think, for us as therapists listening, because I agree, there's so much influence there. And by saying that I understand that she's being honest and open, and she has done a lot of work by reading and interviewing and immersing herself, and she is a huge advocate. But yeah,
Absolutely.
what does that comment then? What ripple effect would that have to justifying, well, I don't need to because I have a friend? Or maybe Gail is going to be a really popular person now. I don't know.
Gail is a really popular person. Gail's got her own show. So she's already pretty famous. But anyway, that's a little chip on my shoulder there about why Oprah, as a mental health, as a therapy, specifically a therapy advocate that I am, I'm like, oh, you just kicked the profession in the shins with that one there, Oprah.
Yeah. I wonder if it'd be tough for Oprah to get therapy because everyone knows she's such a big name. Everyone knows who she is. It'd be very tough to be objective.
Let me just say right here today, Oprah, I'll put all that stuff aside that I just said. You can come to therapy with me. I won't even charge you. Just to come for a few sessions so that you can finally tell people, yes, I have been to therapy.
Yeah.
I offer my services.
I think it's great that she's obviously found her way through so many hardships and she's had learning experiences. But yeah, I know what you meant. I was surprised. I was like, oh, dang. I was like, I totally thought it would have been the opposite.
But it added nothing as well, right? Added nothing to the.
Yeah.
She still could have made her point about the importance of connecting with Gail.
Yeah.
Totally.
Without saying that. She's also talking to Bruce Perry, who's, an extremely passionate and effective therapist, right?
Right.
So it's kind of ironic. But.
Yeah. Yes. Well, anyway, that's just my little, I guess with each one of these books, I've got to have my little gripe. That was my gripe for this book.
There should be a gripe.
That's a very good point. Excellent point.
Yes. Well, is there any, other than that, is there anything else this book didn't mention or something you wish it would have covered? Do you feel like it covered all the bases?
Yeah, it didn't really go into his sequential processing theory thing. Like they reference his sequential theory. Is it the theory? It's been a long week. And they kind of go over what that would look like a little bit. They don't dive into that, which I think needs to be a whole other book anyway, so that it's not a general population book. That would be more of like a treatment or a training for that. So I actually looked on his website afterwards to see what I could find if there were additional trainings or seminars for therapists in that, but there wasn't really a lot there, which I was surprised. I think he has like 6 books or something, and yeah, The Boy Who Was Raised by a Dog was his like next most recent book. So all the other books were before that, which were quite a while ago. Yeah, it would be quite informative. I was curious about it though.
Yeah, he's really good at. He's been a pioneer in terms of understanding trauma. But I think he admitted too that he's not a gigantic expert in terms of healing trauma. He's working on it. He's trying to figure that piece out, right? And it's an ever evolving thing.
And that's what everyone wants to know is now what, right? I think it's in this book, did a great job of describing it and emphasizing important messages that it, I feel like I'm echoing. But yeah, not so much and now what do you do with your trauma, which I think could have gone more into some ideas for that for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely more of a normalize and validate.
Which is powerful. Like if you can
extremely
build some understanding in terms of what's going on within you, it's huge part of the healing process, right?
Well then, your responses are no longer scary, right?
And he even does a great illustration of that where he talks about a patient of his who suffered PTSD from war, I believe, and was like walking down the street with a new girlfriend and heard a backfire from a car and like had to jump down into the street between a couple cars to like, he was truly thrown back into this flashback. And the patient brought his girlfriend to the next session saying, can you please explain to her why it is that I, what PTSD is and why it is that I'm reacting this way. And so he went into his whole model. And again, having that understanding and awareness, I think it's half the battle right there. Just knowing, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. You're responding in this way because you were conditioned to do that. And you're suddenly thrown into this fight or flight or freeze or flock thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, the treatment of it and actually changing your reaction, changing your response to that is more complex and takes a lot of work and very intentional work that people do, which they didn't really get into like EMDR, some of the other more focused treatments for that. Seeing the Fisher's
Yeah.
work and some other folks, but
He definitely mentioned it.
Yeah.
He mentioned a lot, and kind of the steps that it would take, but it definitely wasn't, if there's therapists listening to our podcast right now, it wasn't like a treatment manual style, step by step, here's what to do when you're working with clients. The book was definitely made for more general population so that they can start to understand, normalize, and validate their own experiences,
right.
which is really great.
Yeah. Improving stigma.
Yeah.
Going back to the whole idea of what happened to you versus what's wrong with you.
You.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
true.
What would you guys give the book out of 10?
8.
That was so fast, Ryan.
I've been thinking about this one.
I see your 8, and I raise you to 8.9.
Okay.
Whoa.
Mhm. I'm trying to think of what I gave all the other books, but I guess it doesn't, we don't need to kind of compare because I
Doesn't
feel
really
like
matter.
yeah, I'm right up there. I'll go with, I don't know, I'll go for a solid 9. I like it.
Ooh.
I think for what it is, in terms of education and really normalizing things and sending some really good messages, as well as a lot of little nuggets of understanding trauma, I think it did a great job. So I think it's, it's not a self-help book. It's not that. So I think what they did, they had a conversation. I thought it was, a 9, solid 9.
Very well done. Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to go with 8.5.
Okay. Wow. So
It's a high-rated book.
It's a very highly rated book, and my 8 is the lowest score. That's saying something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if she said that she loved therapy and encouraged everyone to engage in therapy, would it be an 8.3 for you?
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, if someone just even during the editing process of the audiobook just cut that sentence out, I think it would have risen about a half a point for me.
Half a point. Okay.
It's like, why? That has no purpose.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Highly recommended though.
Yes, very highly recommended. We give a pretty good stamp of approval to this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was good. Well done, Joe. You picked it.
Way to go,
Yeah.
Joe.
Nicely done.
So what do you have in line for us next time?
I think that's the topic at hand here. So we got to figure that out. I don't know. We might not
have
be
to
able to.
Yeah, we might have to take the conversation offline and then present it to the listeners next time.
Okay.
And when is next time?
In a couple of weeks.
Couple weeks. Okay.
Yes. One of us is taking an end of summer vacation.
I think 2 of you are taking the end of summer vacation.
Oh, 2 of us are. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So half of the group are taking a little step away next week, but we'll be back in 2. Deep in the heart of September.
Whose turn is it next?
Joe.
Joanna. Joanna will have a topic for us in 2 weeks.
And I guess we'll announce our new book.
Yeah.
Okay. We could do that. Great. Well, look, this was a lot of fun.
Indeed.
A lot of fun and a good book. I think it's safe to say this is our highest rated so far, right?
I think,
By
well, I don't
far.
remember if it was this high for Together.
Together was
Together was a pretty high one, but I don't know if it was. It's
That was
probably
in
somewhere
7s.
close.
Was it? Okay.
I think there was an
Okay.
8 or so. I think I was in the 8s.
Yeah, I probably was too.
Yeah. Well, whoever out there, whichever of the listeners is keeping a tally, keeping their spreadsheet going on our ratings for these books, you can email us at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Let
We'd
us
love to
know.
see that.
Let us know what the stats are there. None of us are actually statisticians. We don't know. But that's it. I guess that's it for tonight, guys. That's all right with you. We'll sign off for now.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
So please like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a friend or two, or if you know Oprah, you can let her know my little gripe. Okay, go ahead and pass that along. She can email me if she wants to. And that's it, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great week. Talk to you later.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.